So for this week in our course content, we're just going to go over the presidency in a couple of quick videos to break down what you're reading. This video is going to detail the prerequisites of the presidency and the early history of the presidency and how it's changed over time. The second video is going to deal with the cabinet, the powers, the constitutional limitations on the office of the president. All right. So first off, the prerequisites are those things that you need to be president, right? The Constitution says you need to be a natural-born citizen of the United States. It doesn't say what natural-born is. It hasn't had to be decided yet, right? But that's one issue that would confront Ted Cruz, for example, whose mom was a United States citizen, but he was born in Canada, right? The Supreme Court would have to decide that. So that would be a question of whether or not he would be a natural-born citizen. Right? The Constitution states that we got to have a natural-born citizen as president. It also says that the president needs to be 35 years of age or older, right? And thirdly, a resident within the United States for at least the last 14 years. So they could be born a citizen that lives somewhere else, but they need to be residing within this country at least for the previous 14 years before they run for office. The 22nd Amendment, which was passed in 1951, limits the president to no more than 2 consecutive terms in office, or a maximum of 10 years. This maximum of 10 years you could conceive of as if the president died in office and the vice president stepped in, could serve no more than 2 years, and then run for election, and then run for re-election a second time. This again was passed after FDR, passed in 1951. FDR, I'm referring to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who served 4 consecutive terms in office, was reelected those 4 terms, right? As well, impeachment, right? Impeachment is a 2-step process. The House is going to vote to impeach the president, and the House votes by a simple majority to do this. Okay, so we can think about Clinton. The House voted to impeach, right? And they brought actual impeachment charges. The Senate then is going to review those impeachment charges. So the second thing that we're going to discuss when it comes to the presidency is how the office has expanded or changed over time. Now, there are certain constitutional powers that we're about to review, and those aren't going to change. Those are embedded in the Constitution. But what does change is how we interpret those powers, how it's interpreted by the Supreme Court, and how it's interpreted by the executive branch or the president moving forwards. Early on in the United States, through the first 50 years or so of the office and of the history of the country, we really saw this office of the presidency as the chief clerk, largely a paper pusher or a secretary for Congress. Over time, this gets expanded through precedent until the office of the executive is what we see it today, right? The president's making lots of executive orders, both this administration and the last. They generally are thought to carry the force of law. There's no doubt that the president is in command of the highest office in all the land, much more so than any congressman or any Supreme Court justice, right? This wasn't necessarily always the case, all right? So the role that precedent has in expanding the office, right, is as each successive president takes a little bit more, and it takes a little bit more broad action or commits to things that maybe previously were thought to be unconstitutional. It expands the role of all presidents to come. A good example would be Thomas Jefferson completing the Louisiana Purchase, right? There's nothing in the Constitution that says anything about executives being able to buy land or purchase land, right? Jefferson makes that action, right? Completes that action, is found to be constitutional and just fine. Well, every successive president after that, that's going to be unquestionable, right? It's already been found to be unconstitutional. So Jefferson does it first, clears the way, and all other presidents can do it. Largely, despite changes from president to president, we have a fairly weakened presidential role until the 1920s with the ascent of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, better known as FDR. FDR greatly expanded not just the power of the executive office, but also the executive branch itself, or the bureaucracy, right? He largely did so through what was called the New Deal, right? This was an aggressive set of economic policies that FDR took in order to help the country get out of the Great Depression, right? So what are we talking about in the New Deal? Some of the things were the Tennessee Valley Authority, the Works Progress Administration, right, where it would take citizens and put them to work building highways, building bridges, things of that nature, right? The New Deal is also where we originally get Social Security in this country for the first time, right? The FDIC, if you've ever been into a bank, you've seen that little plaque that says. The next thing we're going to discuss are the constitutionally stated powers of the president. These are also known as the expressed powers of the president. Okay, expressed, we mean, again, that they're going to be found in the Constitution. So first and foremost, it says that he's the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. We want this to be the president and not in the Senate, right? In case Canada invades or something like that, we got to have a president that can take quick and decisive action in order to respond, right? We don't want a group of 100 senators to have to sit down and figure out what the best strategy would be. If you look at armies around the world, even in socialist or communist countries, no matter what it is, there's always going to be a chain of command. So our president is going to be at the top of that chain of command. Now, constitutionally, if he declares war, he has a time limit in which he needs to go before Congress and authorize that war. But the president can take unilateral action, right? Secondly, the power to make treaties is vested within the president. Now, this is subject to Senate approval. All right? One of the things that weakens the president's ability to make treaties is that he has to go back to the Senate. All right, so if somebody wants to go, if the president right now wants to go talk about climate change, and he wants to get these other countries to sit down, sign an accord, so the United States, France, all these other countries are going to agree to the same issues on climate change, it's harder to get the president to work for them, to work with them, because they know that his Congress isn't going to back him. Right? The president isn't going to be able to pitch any deal. They're going to say, look, if you got a Republican Congress back there, we know they're not going to sign this treaty. The benefit of it is it gives us, as United States citizens, some kind of final check over these treaties, right? So it doesn't just all reside with the president. Next, there's power to make appointments. These are the appointments of judges that you've seen, cabinet picks. So if you've been following the news at all, you've seen that President Trump has been making these appointments. These appointments do have to be confirmed by the Senate, all right? So again, if you've been following these picks, these nominees, you've seen that these different positions that Trump has been picking people for, that they still have to go through a Senate hearing and confirmation process, all right? Lastly, the expressed power lies with the president to grant reprieves or pardons. This is where his judicial power comes in. Reprieves, pardons, act of clemency affect people who have been sentenced to jail time or prison time. President can cancel the remaining amount of their sentence, for example. It's a pardon. So our last video is going to deal with these powers of the president. These that are not expressed in the Constitution, but that we expect the president to fulfill. All right. Again, this is going to be the last video. I'm going to attach a PDF document that's going to talk about the different cabinet positions as well, okay, in the executive branch. But for now, there's a number of expressed powers and responsibilities of the president. He is the head of state and the head of government. All right, when we talk about him being the head of state, you would think about the Queen of England being the head of state and carrying on all these different ceremonial aspects, right? Whereas the Prime Minister is going to be the head of government and representing the government in terms of treaty negotiations, where the Queen might go to the Olympics or something of that nature. All right. The President is also the chief legislature that we have. All right. So, as of any legislator, right, that might sit in the House or the Senate, he is first and foremost. You can see this because whatever plan that they run on, when they come in, they're going to set this forth to Congress. Congress is going to pass this legislation usually, right? So Obama he runs on healthcare reform, and he gets into office, and that's what he puts into place, some type of healthcare reform, right? Our president is also our chief diplomat in representations with other countries, negotiations, right? All of those things. And lastly, as implied, right, he is the commander-in-chief and also the crisis manager. Right? So if we have any kind of natural disaster or anything of that nature in this country, he's going to go ahead and take care of that. Right?